Welcome back to Doing Bart Things, and today we're going to have a little talk about the recently released reviews for the RTX 4060 Ti. Although that's a bit of a almost Freudian slip, I guess, because this card is basically the same performance as its predecessor, 3060 Ti. It really does not offer much of anything in the way of an upgrade, which is, I know, a shocker. As I've been saying, I really was interested to see how it would compare, because I made the comment that this was going to be a worse launch than the 4070, which there's some more details about the 4070 that I'll get into probably in the next video that I'll do just to sort of tie up some loose ends. But I decided to dedicate a video to this because these cards are going to come out tomorrow and be on sale, and anybody looking to go purchase them, I want them to have that happens to see my video, as low rent, ultimately production as I am, where you can see the freaking trash can in the background in the kitchen. I wanted to make sure that folks are aware that this card, it's not really $400. It's not really worth it. I would suggest, honestly, getting other cards over it. So there's just not any real improvement over the last gen, and I can make that argument about other cards as well. I don't think there was a ton of improvement from the 5700 to the 6700 XT. But somehow the 600 XT is still made to look like a great deal because of this card. It's, I mean, again, I'll show some other benchmarks here in a second that I've flipped around. I've tried to get different sources, so that way there's multiple opinions kind of factoring into what ends up being my opinion of it. The 4070 was a dreadful launch. It's just, I mean, you can even see in this graph, AMD's last gen 6800 XT, a custom cooled card, is soundly keeping up with the 4070 Founders Edition, maybe even beating it slightly in this 1440p benchmark, and which I want to highlight due to the decreased bus size. That's the pathway for the memory. The 4060 is actually in that way hamstrung versus the 3060. If it had had just a 192-bit bus, even, it would be enough to at least have some sort of generational improvement, I think, over the 3060. It's just so hamstrung by that it becomes essentially a 3060 Ti, but it's $400, and it's not. It's, as to put it in terms that Gamers Nexus used, it's kind of a waste of sand. So it's just not, it doesn't really, it's not going to compel anybody to purchase this, not only over, if you have a 2070, a 2080, even a 1080 Ti technically, a 1080 maybe, 1060, I don't know. These are older cards, but as long as you have something that performs decently with 8 gigs of VRAM, I'm not so sure you really are excited to buy any of these new cards, but much less this one that's $400. Anyway, so there is no improvement. They're going to show improvement by pushing DLSS on us, and almost all of their marketing materials either has DLSS or it has DLSS and frame generation, which of course frame generation is going to show a bigger number. I need AMD to come out with an update for FSR3. They supposedly said that it was going to support frame generation, and I think and I hope that they look at the market right now and realize if they do anything, they need to get that out, because that is what's going to cause them to get market share, because then it won't matter. that NVIDIA has DLSS 3.0 or whatever. They really need to hammer that and make it a win. They also need to get the mid-range 7000 series out. They've got a lower end 7000 series. I think their starter card is going to be the 7600. So I'll be interested to see what that does in comparison to, say, like this 6600 XT here. It will be an 8 gig card. I anticipate the 7700 series cards, though, will be 12 or 16 gigs. Kind of like the 6700 XT Merc here is 12 gig. So I anticipate that, and they may make a very compelling case. Now that NVIDIA has just chosen to release this GPU that, again, is, I mean, it's crazy because honestly, AMD doesn't even necessarily have to release anything. NVIDIA is just, that they don't, NVIDIA just almost doesn't care. They will either sell you a card at this margin for this price, or they won't sell you one, is what they're essentially saying. So I just, it's pretty crazy, honestly. So moving on, I thought this graph was interesting from Hardware Unboxed. Basically, you can see there at $400, the value of this card from all their benchmarks and things they ran isn't great. It's maybe middle of the graph. And if you price this card at $300, it suddenly makes a lot more sense. Which, again, this is NVIDIA pushing. They are pushing that tier up. You know, it's kind of like if you bought a car for $20,000 3 years ago, they want to sell you the same performing vehicle for $30,000 when it basically has all this. All it is it's got like a little bit different paint job. It's got it has some new bells and whistles, but it's not any faster or does anything different than the one that they sold you a couple of years ago at $20,000. So that's, I'm trying to give it a comparison. That's, I guess, the easiest one I can come up with. But anyway, I thought that was kind of an interesting graph. I mean, you can see here the 3060 Ti at $390 is, you know, we kind of had a problem with that card when it came out too, honestly. So it's sort of like, but you can see up at the top of this graph, like the 6650 XT, the 6700 XT, the 6600 XT. 6700 XT to me is the one that's interesting because it's, you know, it kind of shows, honestly, the 4060 Ti, if they were released it $50 cheaper, like if they knocked $50 off that so they don't look like they're just trying to gas the market, maybe, but they don't want to do that. They want to charge, you know. And I'll get to it. I'll get to it in a minute where the what am I trying to say? Where the cost of performance, you know, sort of comes into play and what the reality of the situation is. So I thought that was an interesting graph to just kind of show you at $300, this card makes a whole lot more sense than at $400. That's a Ti. We've still got a 4060 that's going to come out, and oh boy, I can't wait for that one. The 4060 is going to be $300, and it's an even more cut down version of this card. I can't wait for that one when they review that. So this is an overclock 3D bench. What are we benching here? I forgot. Modern Warfare 2 Warzone. Okay. So I thought this did a good scaling representation of these cards with and without DLSS. So you can see here, this is a Founders Edition with no DLSS turned on. I thought it was interesting to look at the 5700 XT with FSR2 is actually beating it. So that's a 5-year-old card now. I'm trying to think. It's getting it long in the tooth. The 6700 XT keeps pace with it, and it's still keeping pace with it, even though FSR2 is probably not as good as DLSS. So now this is not with frame generation turned on, which again, that would definitely make it a completely non-apples to apples comparison. But if you want a similar performing card, the 6700 XT is out there, and it's not nearly as much money. NVIDIA played this card down, not up. They just said, we're going to release another card that basically performs the same as the 360 Ti. And this is DLSS 3.0, I think, even. You can see here it really isn't overly amazing, even with that turned on, technically. But I don't like having these technologies turned on at bench width anyway, because it's not really an apples to apples thing. Not every video game supports DLSS. Video games support DLSS differently. Like it's a whole thing. So the apples to apples regular rendering is kind of what I would go to draw your judgments on, knowing that if it performs well enough without it turned on, it's going to perform plenty well with it turned on. And then here's the last bench that I had for this that I'll show, which I find really interesting. So if we go up to 1080p, it's doing about what a 2080 Ti does. So that's not last generation, but that's the generation before last's kind of top-end card. Okay, so 3 generations back is what we're talking. The 6800 is right with it. 6750 XT is right with it. The 6800 XT is beating it, and I'm pointing out kind of the competition's cards. 3070 is with it. 3060 Ti is not far off. If we keep going down here, I don't see the 6700. I guess they just use the 6750 XT. So anyway, like, well and good. Still not superior value, because you can get one of these for cheaper than this. But let's see what happens when we up the resolution. And this is yet a third website. This is Guru 3D. Suddenly, when we up the resolution to 1440p, 3060 Ti starts to catch it. You think the bandwidth matters? I think it does. I think that's what's happening here. The 6750 XT actually manages to match it. That's probably within error, so I'm not going to say necessarily like it beats it, but it's definitely there. Look at this. 1080 Ti is starting to kind of catch up there. And actually, I can make a case that this sucks. How old is this video card now? I mean, this video card has been around forever, and yet there we are, which just goes to show how great of a card this was. I'm tired of seeing this. And then if we go to 4K, ta-da, looky there, 1080 Ti, baby. And then the 2080 Ti goes up there, 3070, 3060 Ti. Now it's out ahead slightly, maybe we would call it. And again, I don't think this would be happening if this had a 192-bit bus. I don't think it would be flying away with it, but I think it would be much more competitive. For $400, you're paying $400 for this card that is now matching at 4K a card that, God, how old is a 1080 Ti? 10 years? I'm not even sure. It's been so long. So I want to show this because this is like back in the day when Intel went from had like the Haswell CPU. You know, basically went from 4-core 8-thread CPU to 4-core 8-thread CPU, and it was a 5% uplift. That's what this is like. And you can't, like, they're doing it when they didn't have to. They did not have to do this. They could have offered a little bit more, and people would have been very happy and pleased. The reviewers would have been pleased. The people who tell people what to buy would have been like, all right, it's not an exciting product, but it's got a little uplift, you know? They chose not to do it, but they chose to make you pay this same price for it. And I think, again, this card is not a card I would bother even looking at. I don't think they're going to sell very many of them. I think what's going to happen is very much they're going to end up like either dropping the price, or they're going to have to withhold production. That's what's going to happen. So, sorry for the dreary news. I am going to do another quick video, hopefully this morning, and upload that. That will be about some other things. And videos included in there, some news about the 4070, and other video card news, and some other news about Asus and whatnot. And then, you know, hopefully that'll help everybody who watches me, all 2 people, literally, will have an idea sort of what's going on. So if you were planning on, you were hyped up about the 4060 Ti and you were planning on buying it, my advice is, and again, you do not have to go by my advice. You can do what you want to do. I'm not saying it's a bad card. I'm saying that for the performance, for the money, it's not a good value. I think other cards out there would serve you well. Even last generation, technically, if you could find a good deal on a 3060 Ti, why would you buy the 4060 Ti is what my case is. That's what I'm arguing. Why? There's no reason to. If you can pick up if you're willing to pick up a competitor product, the 6700 or 6750 XT makes a great case for itself, for price to performance. The Intel, in some certain circumstances, maybe not in this game, and I'm not sure what drivers they're using, but the ARC A770 may even make a case for itself if you really want to get something different to toy around with. I know it doesn't look good in this specific benchmark, but we don't know what version drivers and stuff. A lot of times these are not re-reviewed whenever there's a driver update, and Intel just had a big driver update. So anyway, yeah, I would suggest looking elsewhere. If your heart's set on a 460 Ti, I'm not going to tell you how to spend your money. But my suggestion would be to let's not reward NVIDIA for basically doing less than the bare minimum at this point. It's not good. And if you go and watch Gamers Nexus's review, there are definitely plenty of scenarios where this card, the 4060 Ti, loses to its predecessor, especially at higher resolutions. So anyway, guys, thank you again for watching. Leave a like if you like it. Leave a comment if you want. Subscribe maybe even. I'm trying to come out with stuff on the semi-regular. You know, maybe just trying to make folks aware of things, making some commentary. I'm going to be definitely, you know, branching out my videos a bit, talking about all sorts of different things. Just kind of throw it up against the wall and see what sticks. I can record stuff. I've got a camera and a microphone, so why not, I figure. All right. Well, guys, you have an excellent day and a great week.